You're listening to The Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
And they worship the beast, saying, who's like the beast and who's able to wage war with him? Well, they don't know all the history. But if you're going to further the feel and look of impersonating Jesus Christ and create this counterfeit, the beast has to take on the characteristics of the true Messiah. To seal the deal, he has to look like he's died. And he has to look like he's risen from the dead.
Many places in Scripture show people worshiping God saying, "Who is like you, God?" Like in Exodus 15:11, which reads, "Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glorious deeds, doing wonders?" Every word of praise from our lips is like an arrow to the heart of the enemy. All he wants is to be like God, and he will never achieve it. He knows this, but it doesn't stop him from creating counterfeits. Pastor Ken will expose the fakes in today's message. Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, as he continues his message, The Stuff of Nightmares.
So what is it beyond the politics that Daniel is actually warning us about? Back to Daniel 2. Daniel writing in 5-something BC, 500 BC. As the toes of the feet were partly of iron, this is from the New American Standard, and partly of pottery, so my kingdom will be strong and part of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men. Huh? That's talking about genetically, okay? And they won't adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. So they make several points. One, iron's strong, clay is brittle, iron and clay don't mix. Got it. That's easy. But the question is, what do we mean about the lack of cohesion in reference to one another in marriage? What's that all about? And we're talking about an end days actor. This is the 10 nations that this beast represents. So if we accept the fact that this is a dream and it's a revelation direct from Yahweh to Nebuchadnezzar, who's a Gentile king, and also revealed to Daniel, who then communicates it to us, I think it's supernatural, okay? I'm going to go with that. Anybody else want to agree that it's supernatural? There's another way of looking at this that blends this series of ideas that runs through Scripture from Genesis 6 all the way to the book of Revelation. And remember, the people who are writing it are using the best means they can with the language they know with what they see at the time that they're writing it. But they're using language that you sit there and you scratch your head and go, huh? Because it doesn't make sense. Well, it's starting to make sense. It's another possible interpretation of this Scripture. So Doug Hamp actually took that Scripture and said, let's retranslate it using modern terminology to help grasp the full implication of the verse. They will hybridize, mingle, mix, or crossbreed themselves with the genetic material of mankind. This rendering is further enhanced when we consider the use of seed of men, which in Daniel is the Aramaic word for men or mankind, the seed of mankind. So who are they? Who are they? Who's that? They're identified in verse 44. Those kings are going to be commingled or mixed with the offspring of mankind, but not in harmony. Does this imply they're not fully human? Or is this a geopolitical statement of some kind that just says, they're just weird governmental forms? The language tends to point that this is a repeat of Genesis 6, 1-4, especially when you take Jesus' statement that it'll be like the days of Noah. Daniel 2:44, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms. It will itself endure forever. He's talking about the second coming of Christ, wiping them out at Armageddon. It's done. But it says, in the lifetime of those kings. Human kings? Yeah, more than likely. But remember, we've studied already that behind human kings who are operating counter to God, there is another power behind each one of them, right? Guess where all the fallen divine beings are at this point in the tribulation? They're on earth, all of them. So the individual who's been giving hints to King X is now probably on his staff giving him the same hints. And it's the same fallen divine being that had been doing it before. So I'm reminded of what it says in Ephesians 6:12, or 6:12 rather. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. And Paul kind of puts it out there. He says, this is what we're battling against. This is also a last days kind of a statement. The battle is against rulers, the powers, against world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places. Okay, they're not in heavenly places anymore. They're here. They're all on earth, all of them. So who are the rulers? The word that Paul uses is archon or archos. They are spiritual beings and they're related to angels. But there are faithful ones and there are fallen ones. When you see the word kings, remember Daniel was talking to Gabriel and he referred to the prince of Persia and the prince of Greece. Are we talking about an earthly king or not an earthly king? We're in Daniel, is where we see that. They were originally created to be good, but their abode is now in the heavenly places, which is actually earth. That's where they hang out. It's the lowest of the different heavenly spheres, and it's the one from which darkness comes into the world. So, okay, we know that the rulers are fallen divine beings. They're fallen angels. Then we have powers. That Greek word's exousias. And all throughout the Scripture, many times it talks about power of God, but it also can mean a person. And it's talking about someone who's subject to one's rule, dominion, or jurisdiction. And it talks about fallen angels and archangels. So this is a higher rank. So, I mean, you can look at it as rulers are the NCOs. Now we're talking about the not command staff yet. We're probably on company grade officers, kind of a thing. First, second lieutenants, captains, that's about it, maybe. So that's the powers. And then we get to the world forces of darkness that Paul talks about. And he takes two words and puts them together. And it's cosmokrator. How's that for a word? Actually, in the Greek, it's cosmokratoros. But he combines two words. He combines the word cosmos, which is the system of human existence in its many aspects of the world. It's the fallen world system, the cosmos. And then he uses the word kratos, which means the exercise of ruling ability, power, or authority. And you put those two together and you have a new word. And the new word is cosmokrator, which means a fallen divine being who rules the entire world. By the way, it's in plural. There's more than one. So these are the ones who are behind each of these kings. There is a fallen divine being, a fallen world ruler, if you want to call it that, behind each of these kings. And if you take a look at what it says in Psalm 82, when God appoints angels to oversee the different nations, this is who we're talking about. These are the prince of Greece and the prince of Persia that he's talking about. So they who are hybridizing themselves with the genetic seed of mankind, we saw that they, after the comment, the statement in Daniel, they are the fallen divine beings. They're the ones who are trying to interact and become part of humanity, but it doesn't work. Just like it didn't work in Genesis 6. So we're talking about kings, human, yeah, but we're also talking about the cosmokrators who are behind the scene, the fallen divine beings who are calling the shots. And then you go and take a look at 2 Thessalonians, chapter 2, verses 9 to 12, talking about this same time period. The coming of the lawless one, who's that? That's the beast, will be accompanied by the power of Satan. Got it. And what will Satan do? He will use every kind of power. Well, what power has he used in the past that we know of? Genesis 6. Oh, and David had a problem with these guys too. They were Goliath and the boys. Moses had a problem with Bashan and with a guy by the name of Og who was 13 feet tall. If the information is correct just about Goliath, he weighed 1,000 pounds and required 7,000 calories a day just to maintain his body weight. These aren't little guys. So Satan will use every kind of power, including miraculous signs. We're not ready for a world ruler who can do miracles. This one will. Lying wonders, and every kind of evil, type of evil, to deceive those who are dying. Those who refuse to love the truth that would save them. For this reason, God will send them a powerful delusion so that they'll believe the lie. I don't know what the lie is. I mean, could the lie be that this is God, this beast, or that he's been altered to the point that he is becoming what the future of man is? Who knows? We don't know. But it's a lot more than, I think, as you start looking at it, than what we see on the outside. The beast may very well be genetically enhanced, and his armies may be genetically enhanced as well, to be called like a leopard, like the things that they're talked about. That accounts for the speed and ferocity, and then the enhancements to include neural interfaces to a network creates superior speed and reaction time. I mean, if they can get computerized information from satellites and immediately utilize it and then communicate with everybody at the speed of thought, good night. The power that they have. And this is what our military is trying to have by 2035, excuse me. Now, one such deception is a book distributed by the Ashtar Command. Now we're talking about people who think aliens are, okay? It's called Project World Evacuation. The book was channeled, anytime you see somebody who's channeling something, read demon-possessed and talking on behalf of the demon. That's what's happening. Tula is the one who channeled it. She channels 4 fallen angels who go by the following names. Sananda, who also says he's Jesus Christ. Okay. Cthulhu, a third entity who calls itself Andromeda Rex, and the fourth who goes by Ashtar. And these 4 angels working through Tula give her a message to share to the world. The message talks about coming world catastrophes and an upcoming worldwide evacuation of souls from the earth so they can be safe during the world changes. Imagine that. It is more complicated than that, but it gives us a synopsis. The basic message of the book is that the New Age faithful will be taken from the earth before bad things happen, and they'll be spiritually evolved, while giant UFOs that the fallen angels say are Earth will come down, and they'll be brought back after the chaos on Earth is over. But they also say that there are some, alluding to Christians, who won't accept the changes. They're going to be sent someplace else for special training. Okay. I don't know what they're smoking, but does it make sense from what I'm saying here? When you read what it says in Daniel, and you read what it says about this guy, and you start combining information later in chapter 13, there's more going on here than just a guy who rises to power and miraculously doesn't die as a result of an injury. The advent of the beast signals an increase in activity and a return to the conditions that existed as a result of fallen angels descending to Mount Hermon. All of them are here. All of them. The 1/3 that fell, they're all here on earth. So, and rabbinic tradition says there are only 200 fallen watchers on Mount Hermon. Now there's over 1 billion here on planet Earth, whatever 1/3 of all the angels is. And they're all here. So, yeah, wouldn't we expect to see a repeat of the Nephilim? Yeah, sure, probably would. Genetic manipulation, other things that we've been relegating to mythology? Yeah, that too. We'll probably see all of it. Are we being prepared for this right now by the enemy? Okay? Let's talk about mythology. How are we being conditioned for this? Who likes watching Captain America? He's an enhanced human, an enhanced soldier, genetically enhanced. Okay? How about Iron Man? He's a cyborg. He's cybernetically linked, and he's not totally human. Superman. He's a copy of the Messiah. He's a Messiah impersonator. How about the Hulk? Can you say Nephilim? Except under control, based on the last film now. So he can turn it on, he can turn it off. Are you seeing how we're being conditioned? Yeah, the world is. Oh, and Captain Marvel? She's an enhanced human. Completely enhanced. And then you start looking at Greek mythology. Okay, Disney's publishing division is now doing a new fiction imprint that they're going to do 5 series based on the old gods aimed at young readers. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the demigod Poseidon, Magnus Chase, and the gods of, they call them baby-faced professional wrestlers. In other words, it's just superheroes. And now they're taking these different Greek gods who really, as we've studied and seen already, aren't, those are names of actual fallen divine beings that they gave themselves when they were in Greece. And now we're conditioning young people with it by giving them books. I mean, I've read them. They're not bad. But at the same time, it's conditioning. It's to get people used to this stuff. How do you get used to the lie? You just keep repeating it over and over and over again. Some guy named Joseph Goebbels said that. It still works. And now we also have this apparent assassination of the beast. Okay, let's look at that. Let's look at what it actually says. I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain. This is verse 3 and 4. And his fatal wound was healed. He doesn't die. Believe it or not, there are probably at least fully 1/3 to 1/2 of all folks who have commentated on this and written books who think he dies. Doesn't say it. As if he had been slain. And the whole earth was amazed. Now, whole earth dwellers. Okay? There it is again. Was amazed and followed after the beast. And they worshiped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who's like the beast and who's able to wage war with him? Well, they don't know all the history. But if you're going to further the feel and look of impersonating Jesus Christ and create this counterfeit, the beast has to take on the characteristics of the true Messiah. To seal the deal, he has to look like he's died. And he has to look like he's risen from the dead. And have scars. Okay? And then he's going to enter into the temple, as Jesus said, and demand to be worshipped as God. Now, if he is aligned with Islamic folks, this might be upsetting to some of them to have somebody who they thought was on their side walk in and say, no, I'm God, you're going to have to worship me. But the world's a very different place when this is going on, okay? I mean, you have to understand, by this time in world history, the population of the planet has gone from 7 billion to probably about 4 billion in less than 3.5 years. There's also been a 5-month period of demons terrorizing all non-believers on the planet. There's been a period of time with demons going around and killing fully 1/3 of those who don't know Jesus on the planet. And so this is a counterfeit. And again, the idea is to counterfeit. It's not the real deal. Satan doesn't have an original idea. These are counterfeit ideas. I don't think it's a true resurrection, but I think it looks and feels like one. So, you know, the press is not going to say he was in a hospital and had implants and was on life support during that time period and he's fine now. Well, and genetic therapy is working good. Don't be surprised if he has a lot of he looks kind of furry or whatever. But he's probably not quite human anymore post-injury. This attempted assassination is going to take place using a small hand weapon of some kind. The word in the Greek about the weapon, sword, is machaira, which is a small sword used by the Romans for up-close personal work. It may be a sword. It may be a small handgun. I don't know. We just don't know. But the beast receives a blow to the head, says that in Revelation 13:14, and it appears to be a death blow, and it changes his appearance. So stop and think. People have rejected a wounded, slain, and resurrected Christ. They want nothing to do with him. But they'll bow to this guy who kills everyone and is slain unto death but lives? Really? How lost do you have to be? Jesus invites us to believe and freely believe. We have a choice. We'll see that after the beast walks into the temple and says, worship me or else, he's not giving anybody a free choice. It's worship me or die. That's his world. What does he look like? Zechariah 11:17 tells us, "Woe to the worthless shepherd who leaves the flock. A sword will be on his right arm and on his right eye. His arm will be totally withered and his right eye will be blind." So we know his right arm is withered. And I see that, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, prosthetic arm. Unless he leaves it intentionally withered. And he's blind in the right eye. Well, maybe he has a neural implant now there. And he is blind, but he has a lot more going on because he's got a direct implant going straight into his brain. The root word used here about him being killed is the same word that we've seen elsewhere in Revelation. It's the word sphazo, which means slaughter, and it's the ritualized killing of someone. So it could be a sword. Maybe one of his Islamic buddies finally has a gutful and they try to take his head off. Could be. Doesn't end well for him, I guess. But we've examined the word once before, and it is used for murder, but it is also used for ritual sacrifice, as we see in Leviticus 4:15, where the bull shall be slain, and in the Septuagint, the word is sphazo, and it's only used for ritual slaying. It carries the sense of murder, but it is used heavily in the ritualized slaughter of animals for sacrifice in the temple. And when we talked about the fifth seal judgment, remember we learned about what happened to those who had been killed? Well, we found out that the word was used. They had been slaughtered, systematically slaughtered because of their faith in Jesus Christ. And we saw in Revelation 20, verse 4, that the death is due to beheading. What religious group kills by ritualizing beheading people? It's Islam. So again, you start seeing some things that become a little more consistent. Jesus was sacrificed as the perfect Passover lamb, and he died on the cross and then rose from the dead. Pre-tribulation believers were to be ritually slaughtered for their faith. Is this an assassination attempt by some other Islamic group? It could be. It could be another Islamic group trying to kill him, ritually killing him by beheading him or something. I don't know. That might be for the reason for the break and why all of a sudden we have this other animal, this beast that we'll talk about, rising from the land, and then we have the rise of the false prophet. But it talks about him being made blind, and it's only in one eye, and the form of the language is in the passive, okay? Something is done to him or for him. He's not involved in it. So could it be the blindness, since it's passive, is the result of the implantation of a cybernetic device? Could be. Don't know. Could also just be he had a bad day with a sword. Either one. But stop and think about this. And this is, again, coming from this textbook on post-human management. Stop and think about people who are no longer able to quit their jobs because now they rely on their employers for antivirus updates, immunosuppressive drugs, and physical maintenance of their cyborg implants, okay, their cyborg body. Human workers whose invasive neural interfaces allow them to dwell permanently in virtual worlds and whose physical bodies must be cared for by their employer's biomedical support division. Neurocybernetically linked human workers who lose personal identity and merge to form a hive mind whose members share collective sensations, emotions, and volitions. This is beginning to sound like Book of Revelation stuff here, is what it's beginning to sound like. Oh, they make up a new word. They call it the Internet of Being. Could be. We'll get more into that as we get into further into chapter 13, because when we get to verse 15, there's some very interesting words there in the Greek.
Today's message was in the book of Revelation. Pastor Ken has been teaching from this prophetic book here on the Unsafe Bible. You hear often about people trying to predict the end of the world or referring to some kind of apocalyptic event. But the truth is, the real apocalypse or revelation of Jesus Christ is something unlike anything else. If you know Jesus, you see these events as something that God will bring about to eventually restore things to how they were meant to be. If you view God as an enemy, you would naturally perceive the events in Revelation as some foreign enemy seeking to wreak havoc on the world and bring it to ruin. So what's the truth? If you're curious about what we believe and what our core foundation is built on, go to theunsafebible.com to learn more. Are you in the Jupiter, Florida area? If so, you're welcome to join us for these types of teachings in person. You'll find ways to contact us on our website, so you can learn when and where we meet each week. You can also access more teachings online by going to the unsafebible.com and looking under the Media tab. Catch up on any messages you've missed, or listen to one you already heard as a refresher. Once again, that's the unsafebible.com. We're so glad you took the time today to hear from God and His Word. Pastor Ken has more to share from the book of Revelation, so don't miss a single edition. In the meantime, continue growing on your own in this very peculiar book of the Bible. And join us again on the Unsafe Bible.